Inside the Flannan Isles lies a lighthouse with a very storied history. In the year 1900, it was being manned by three very experienced lighthouse keepers, Donald MacArthur, James Ducat, and Thomas Marshall. Sometime in December 1900, all three vanished, never to be seen again. Was it something supernatural? Seabirds? Madness and murder? A government operation? Foreign spies? No one knows exactly what took place that day at the Flannan Isles, but one thing is for sure. Someone or something snatched the three men on that wintry night over 120 years ago. The amount of people that go missing without a trace in this world is so far beyond anything you would ever care to believe. Unexplained disappearances are almost just as much a part of our human history and existence as birth and life itself. And this one is surely no exception. On December 26, 1900, a small ship makes its way to Island Moor, a remote island in the Flannan Isles where three lighthouse keepers managed a lighthouse. The ship was carrying Joseph Moore, a replacement lighthouse keeper for one of the three keepers who worked on a rotational basis. As the ship reached a landing platform, however, Moore was surprised to find that no one was waiting for him. He blew his horn and sent up a warning flare to attract attention, but there was no response. A sense of dread filled his heart as he went to the lighthouse to find out what had happened. Once he got there, he knew immediately something had gone horribly wrong. The door to the lighthouse was unlocked, and in the entrance hall, two of the three oilskin coats belonging to Thomas Marshall, James Ducat, and Donald MacArthur were gone. Moore continued to the kitchen, where he found a meal sitting half-eaten, as if the person eating it disappeared like particle matter from a movie. There was an overturned chair, looking as if whatever had befallen the keepers had come suddenly. One of the most peculiar things, though, to be certain, was the kitchen clock had stopped dead in its tracks, as if time itself had stopped. All clocks just showed the same time, dead in their gears, never to show a new minute ever again in their lifetime. Now, while not totally mysterious, clocks die all the time, the circumstances in which they were found and everything else surrounding this case just makes it that much more odd. The perplexing clues raised even more unanswered questions. Why would one of the keepers go outside without his coat in such dreadful weather? Why did all three of them leave their post, which was against the rules to leave the post unattended in the first place? Why had the kitchen clock stopped working, and what could even cause all of this to happen? When Moore returned with his report, Captain James Harvey had the island searched. Unfortunately, no bodies were ever found. All three keepers had completely up and vanished. Harvey then sent a telegram to the mainland asking for help. Quote, "A dreadful accident has happened at Flannan's. The three keepers, Ducat, Marshall, and the Occasional, have disappeared from the island. On our arrival this afternoon, no sign of life was to be seen on the island." A few days later, Robert, the board superintendent who had recruited and knew all three men personally, departed for the island to investigate the disappearances. His investigation led him to the lighthouse log entries written by Marshall, which proved to be even more baffling and the beginning of the oddest part of the entire story. Entry 1. December 12th. Gale. North by northwest. Sea lashed to fury. Storm bound 9 p.m. Never seen such a storm. Ducat quiet. MacArthur crying. Entry 2. December 13th. Storm continued through the night. The wind shifted west by north. Ducat quiet. MacArthur praying. 12 noon. Gray daylight. Me, Ducat, and MacArthur prayed. Final entry. December 15th. 1 p.m. Storm ended. Sea calm. God is over all. Now you might think, there it is. Mystery solved. It was a storm. 3 unfortunate men caught in the wakes of the sea, Poseidon himself. However, that last entry, storm ended, sea calm, wouldn't really matter. And anyways, the peculiar thing was that no storms were reported from the 12th to the 15th. Moreover, these men were seasoned lighthouse keepers, and it was hard to believe that they were crying and praying all because of a fierce storm. And what is the meaning of the final entry? God is over all. And most chilling, Ducat quiet. James Ducat, a man of many words and an experienced maritime man, was quiet. Quiet enough for it to be noted in a log? Why? Why was this so important that it was written down? Also, he stated in the log that Donald MacArthur had been crying. MacArthur was a veteran mariner with a reputation for brawling, so it would be strange for him to be crying in response to a storm. Prior to the discovery that the men were missing, the light had not been seen on the islands from the nearest point on Lewis, 16 miles away, for over 10 days. A little further digging into that, and we find that a steamer was passing the lighthouse around midnight on the 15th of December and noted that the light was not lit, and they reported this when they arrived at port. However, this fact was not communicated to the commissioners, and the disappearance of the keepers was only discovered as a result of the routine visit by the lighthouse tender 11 days later. Returning to the investigation, Robert uncovered further clues in the landing platform, where he found ropes strewn all over the rocks. These ropes were usually held in a brown crate 70 feet above on the platform on a supply crane. Officially, he closed the investigation with this explanation. I am of the opinion that the most likely explanation of the disappearance of the men is that they had all gone down on the afternoon of Saturday, the 15th of December, to the proximity of the West Landing to secure the box with the mooring ropes, etc., and that an unexpectedly large roller had come up on the island, and a large body of water going up higher than where they were and coming down upon them had swept them away with resistless force. Needless to say, this became the most widely accepted explanation. However, I don't personally agree with this one. It leaves considerable room for doubt. The lack of bodies, the calm sea conditions, and the weird, confounding clues at the lighthouse. It's an easy explanation. Too easy. A way out. A way for humans to explain what normally can't be explained. In any case, we may never find our answer to what happened to our keepers. And all this just to ensure that the mystery would continue to baffle generations of sailors and researchers for over 126 years. Keith McCloskey, who researched the story extensively for his book, The Lighthouse, The Mystery of the Eilean Mor Lighthouse Keepers, said, "For me, the giant wave theory doesn't work. It seems obvious, so the theory seems convenient. The truth is, nobody really knows what happened." Ducat left behind a wife and 4 children. MacArthur, a wife and 2 children. The disappearances tarnished the lighthouse's reputation for many years after the incident, as it would any, especially knowing the history surrounding all the folklore of the area. To this day, it stays standing, remaining a landmark of speculation, argument, and mystery. One that, like many others, will most likely never be solved.